Hello and welcome to the Dissing My Ability podcast. I am your host, Ken Meeker, certified professional coach, and I am really excited about the guest that I have today. She is someone who I met through also being in the National Career Development Association, and at this year's conference, we really got to spend some time together and laugh together and just really enjoy each other's company. And so I'd like to welcome to the show Dr. Sujata Ives. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Ken. It's such an honor and privilege to be here today.
The honor is all mine, I promise. So, just to introduce you a little bit to the audience, you are won the Diversity Award from NCDA in 2023, which is well deserved and earned. You have just published a book called Activate Success. So, congratulations on that. And if you'd be willing to, introduce yourself to the audience, and if you are comfortable sharing a little bit about the particulars of your disability and how entered the fray of your work as well.
Sure thing. Well, it's a hard one to hide. I'll tell you that right off the bat. Some people have invisible disabilities, and mine is just right there at the forefront. So I have a condition where my vocal cords do not close. And I spent years just hiding and being introverted and, had to do the good work, as they say, that we ask our clients to do. And I had to come to the realization that my brain was just fine. My body was just fine. My life was just fine. It was just my vocal cords. And I just had to find that courage and acceptance and humility inside of me to understand that nature does not make mistakes, and that I really need to be out there inspiring and empowering people. So, with the help of my family, the support of my family, I, as a military wife, went through 19 military moves. We saw the world, and then I decided to open up a private practice. And I am just enjoying helping emerging leaders and bonding and networking with people such as yourself. And yes, we had such a great time, didn't we?
We did.
At the San Diego NCDA conference. And I look forward to the Atlanta conference too, sitting next to you and being witty and being kind, which will be just a great thing to look forward to.
Likewise. I definitely find your personality, the attitude you bring towards the work you do, and you create such a warm, welcoming space around everybody that I've ever seen you encounter with, which is really, truly special, I believe. Not as common as we would all like it to be. Some of the work that you've done, and actually, I would say, from my perspective, a lot of the work that you've done and that really, truly I find meaningful as somebody watching you do the work has been around really focusing on emerging economies throughout the world and focusing on trying to get women more access. Is that a fair way of
Yes.
of measuring it? And so I was hoping that you'd be comfortable talking a little bit about that work that you do specifically and why that's so important for you personally.
Absolutely, Ken. So, what I want to do at this point is to give the audience a visual. And that visual is coming from the United Nations. The United Nations has created something called Sustainable Development Goals. And there is a beautiful picture, a chart of 17 goals, of which one of the goals is equity and equality. And that equity piece, I believe, because of my passion for access and for resources, I want to advocate for and campaign for through the not only through the Western Hemisphere, but also the Eastern Hemisphere. And my interest in the Eastern Hemisphere comes from the fact that I was born in India, and I came here as a grade schooler. And so, having been born in what they used to call, they don't call it that anymore, but what they used to call a have-not nation. And that's what it was termed back then in the 70s. But have not meant that the resources were lacking, the policies, the procedures were lacking. And on top of that access issue, we also in India had another challenge, and that is the caste system.
Mm-hmm.
So here in the Western Hemisphere, there is the class system. And for people who don't realize what the difference is, I just want to explain it briefly. A class system that we have in the Western Hemisphere is one where you can easily climb up the ladder if you wish. Now, I use the term easily very loosely. We know that, we know that there are issues and challenges here at the systemic level, at the group level, and at the individual level also. However, the challenge in the Eastern Hemisphere is specifically in India, stemming from the caste system, is because church and state is not separate.
Yeah.
So the Hindu religion believes in the caste system. Caste means that you stay in the vocational and family status of which you were born in. Mm-hmm. So there are 4 levels of the caste system. If you're in the highest level, you're a Brahmin, and hooray for you, you got the lucky cards. You're the highest caste. If you're at the lowest caste, you're very unlucky because these are actually termed as the untouchables. Mm-hmm. And the untouchables really have no access. There are no resources. And many of them resort to begging on the streets. And there's a great deal of poverty in India. And of course, the population is, just exorbitant at 1.5 billion. That's with a B.
Yeah.
Billion people. So you can imagine, so what's the difference here? And it's really the huge difference here. The difference is really the access and the resources. And that's why I've immersed myself into the Eastern Hemisphere as well as the Western Hemisphere in bringing attention to and awareness and intentional action and advocacy to those particular SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals of equity and women's equality and work equality, workforce development.
Well, I think it's incredibly important. And I think that before anything can change, we have to create awareness, right? We have to let people know that, hey, there's this issue over here that needs to be addressed. So let's start the work, right?
Yes,
Um,
that's right.
and within that space, because I think it does, it's important and needs a lot of attention. Where would you say are areas like within creating not just the attention, but the actual work to create change? What would you say, to listeners is something that they could do, as individuals to help support the work that you're doing around not just creating the awareness, but actually starting to have change happen where, policies and where they can actually do something and be an active part of trying to
Yes,
move the needle forward and move the dial forward in
yes,
those emerging economies where there's not as much mobility.
that's right, exactly. You know, uh, if um, you are passionate, that passion has to be there. And that's what calls us to different niches. And if you are passionate about helping this globe and different nations or the 7 regions of this world, the first thing that I would encourage, that I would invite the audience to do, is to please join associations, because your workplace, whether it's private practice or whether it's higher education or secondary education or business or healthcare, whichever niche you're in, has some constraints in what you are able to do. So, my pearl of wisdom here today is for people to join associations, because you can really move that needle so much more than if you can within the constraints of the system
Hmm.
that you work in.
Yeah.
Because yes, absolutely, because when you work in a given workplace, you must follow their mission, their vision, of course, and that's how they keep this collective consciousness going. So, yes, I mean, that's how we can communicate with each other and get things done, is through a collective mission and vision. Now, if you want to do more, that's the part where I want to invite people to join associations such as National Career Development Association. And one step further is the Asia Pacific Career Development Association. And so through that association, which is connected to NCDA, I have found plenty of opportunities and venues to make a difference, because the more that we get involved in associations, the more our voice can be heard. We can publish, we can do podcasts there, we can do networking through the people that have collected with like mindedness and like heartedness. So for me, this is just my perception, this is my viewpoint, that I can do much more through professional associations.
I like that. That's a really good way of creating access for people where they feel like maybe their hands are tied or something like that. And, even if, regardless as to the industry that somebody works in, I'm glad that you mentioned that. So like, if somebody's in healthcare, there's tons of healthcare associations. There's tons of professional organizations that necessarily aren't tied to their workplace per se, but that are where they have power, where their voice matters, where they can be an instrument of change, just like you and I try to be within NCDA. because
Yes.
we're in the career, we're career practitioners, and so that's the space we operate in. But there's that for manufacturing. There's that for any, there's associations for every trade and, type of work that people do. And so I love that idea of using the association as an instrument of change, because there's just, it has, the totality of the membership has more power. So on that note, I kind of want, I'm gonna ask you a question about, and I think you and I talked about it a little bit. You're aware of what SHRM recently did with regard to removing equity as part of its,
Yes.
DEI mission. And I'm curious as to your thoughts about that, because that's a large association. It's the biggest one of human
Yes.
resource practitioners in the country, if not the world. And
Yes.
so their reach is quite large and their impact is significant. And
Yes.
so they're deciding that equity is not something and I couldn't disagree with them more
Yes.
strongly about what
Sure.
they've done. But I'm curious as to what are your thoughts about
Yes.
them
Yes.
removing
Yes.
equity from their platform?
Such a great question, Ken, and it does cause an emotional reaction in me because equity is at the forefront of my brain here, for people. It's my niche, it's my passion. So, yes, and so the emotions come up. And so I do want to say to the audience, always think of yourself in this world in three levels: the individual, you within a group, right? The individual within a group or a team, and the team within a system. So, what can you do at the individual level? There is a locus of control.
Hmm.
There are things that are under your control that you can do. And of course, there are things that you cannot, and so you must accept that which you cannot change. At the group level, as an individual, you can make a huge difference too. There is a locus of control.
Hmm.
But the challenge now, comes in the system.
Yep.
We are within a system, and systems are making these decisions. Now, one thing is, we don't know why this particular association has made such a radical decision. But one thing I know from past experience and from my decades lived here on Earth, the bottom line, Ken, is usually financial.
Yeah.
He who holds the gold has the power.
Yeah.
And so, who knows? Maybe the leaders or the board of directors in SHRM have been swayed in this direction because those people that think this way are the funders, are the investors in such an association.
Yeah.
But, but, here's this big, big thing now. But they may have underestimated the fact that uh, associations are people centered and people focused.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. And I think that the more people that come forward and speak up about why such a decision was made, and or how are they going to address equity in a different manner rather than taking it off the table completely. It's the people, it's the voice of the people.
Yeah.
Now, there's a way and there's a way. I'm really concerned about people who attack and who come forward as, torch carrying villagers, like
Burn
the
it all
Shrek
down type.
movie,
Yeah.
like the the Shrek movie where
Yeah.
they come after Shrek.
Yeah.
So I think that this can be done through civility.
Yes.
And I think that the members of associations, especially Sherm, like you said, it's just gigantic. It's a monster. But the people have to come up and speak up. They
Yeah.
can't just keep saying, you're doing great, you're doing great. I mean, that's just apple polishing. You have to speak your
Yeah.
truth.
Yes.
And
Absolutely.
that's how it is. And without getting political, nobody needs to get political because politics is going to go on without you and me and he and
Yeah.
she and
Yeah.
they and them. So we're not going to get into that. But
Yeah.
what we do want to definitely highlight is attitudes, attitudinal change.
Yeah.
And of course, the knowledge is its power in so many levels at the individual, at the team, and systemic. Knowledge can lead to experiential learning, and more than that, insightful learning.
Yeah.
So that's what we need, Ken. We just need more people to come forward that have that wisdom and the insight and the perspicacity to make the right decisions.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree wholeheartedly. Strongly as I feel about their choice, I've taken it as an opportunity to really explain to people who may not understand why it's so important that equity is a part of it. Because as someone with a disability, accommodations is all about equity. That's what it is. That's what an accommodation is equity. And that's why it's so important because when you remove equity, it's not saying that you have a seat at the table. It's that you're let in the door. And that's not enough. That's not what people want. That's not change. And that's why I think it's so important. It's like, I'm sure you're familiar with the image of three people of different heights trying to look over a fence at a baseball game, right?
Yes,
And
yes,
I
yes.
use that as an example of a bad way of demonstrating equity. And this had to be pointed out to me as well, because in the image where everyone's able to see over the fence, one of the
That's
boxes
right.
is taken away and given to the shortest person.
That's right.
And that is not what equity is. Nothing is ever taken away from somebody in order for things to be equitable. It's
Correct.
not about this is all the resources we have. There's nothing else. So in order for people with disabilities to thrive, you have to take something away from someone else. And that's just not the way it works. That's not how equity works when it's done well. And so I've taken this as an opportunity to really point out like, this is why it matters. If you are a person with a disability, which is 1/4 of Americans, equity is everything for you being able to thrive and do the best work that you can do and really participate fully in the world, right?
Mhm.
And that's one of the reasons I feel so strongly about it is I need equity to be a part of my life because otherwise I'm not able to fully participate in the world, and that's something that is just not acceptable.
That's right.
Um,
Oh,
yeah, go ahead.
100%.
Yeah,
100% the accommodations and you know some people, some parts of this world, and of course in history we've seen horrific things, for example from Adolf Hitler and such, just horrific things of no accommodations, no adaptations. It's about annihilation.
yeah,
And we can't, we cannot have that.
no, we
We
can't
just
entertain it. Yeah,
cannot give even an iota of an inch to that path.
yeah, yeah. One of the things that I think is critically important, especially today, is so many of the technology and so many of the devices and so many of the things that we take for granted that are just a part of our everyday life are the result of accommodations that were created for people with disabilities, right? You know,
Mhm.
keyboards. The whole reason we have keyboards is because the first one was something created so that a friend could correspond with a friend that was blind, right? And so that's something most people aren't aware of that we use on a daily basis and we just take for granted. We
Yes.
all use Siri or Alexa or, with speech to text, you name it. That was an adaptation from something that was designed for accessibility for people that were blind.
Yes.
And so, like all
Yes.
of these wonderful things that ramps, who doesn't
Yes.
want to use a ramp, if they're
Mhm.
moving something? There's all
That's
these
right.
various things that
That's
were
right.
created to make the world more accessible for people with disabilities, but yet we all enjoy it. It elevates all of our lives.
That's right.
And if we don't acknowledge that, if we don't say that that's important, that people should be able to participate fully in society, what are we taking away from
Yes.
everyone, disability or
Yes.
not, right?
Yes. Yes. That exactly, Ken. And, I'm sure that people have heard that in a higher education in Texas and in Florida, they have completely removed DEI.
Yeah.
There is no such thing as diversity programs in higher education anymore. People that I know in higher education are going to their desks, for example, in Florida, and the minute they put in the word diversity on their work computer, it gives them a white page.
Yeah. It's
Yes.
yeah, and it's
So
like I don't get it.
yeah, yes, and it just leaves you in really in utter confusion as to what is there to gain here?
Yeah.
What is because during decision making, there's pros and cons, of course, but where is this leading? Where is this going?
Yeah.
Because, like you just said, all of the accommodations are accessible then to everybody, and everybody can benefit from, like you said, these adaptations, these um, phone systems or keyboard systems, computer systems, and iPhone uh, type systems. Everything can benefit them, but the blind person or the person like me, whose voice wiggles and jiggles, too. Uh, we just need that a little bit of help to do our jobs,
Yeah.
to fulfill our potential and to optimum high performance.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's what it's really about, because it's about it part of it's about dignity, right? You know, um there's
Absolutely.
dignity in work and and in order
Yes.
to take pride in your work, you have to be able to do it to the best of your ability. And if you don't have the tools you need, how can you can't put in a screw with a hammer. Well, you could, but it's not going to come out right. So that's why, accommodations are so important. Yeah,
Yeah, I love that
dignity.
word that you just brought up is dignity. And it's, I mean, for heaven's sake, so when you go to the grocery store, even, I've always seen people helping people, whether they're elderly or with a disability of some sort. This altruistic nature, this need to help people, it kicks in. It does. It's this internal attitude and internal built-in kind of genetic propensity, that we have. And that's what I choose to believe because
Yeah.
I'm a humanistic psychologist. So I'm not going to believe that man is, a monster. As a humanistic psychologist, I choose to believe that man will do good
Yeah.
in
Well, we need
these
each other.
circumstances.
Yeah, we need each other. We can't survive without each other. And the
That's right.
further we get away from each other, it seems like the harder things become and the worse off we are for it. I think. So I'm hoping that we could talk about your book a little bit that you just had, you're the
Oh,
co-author of. And so I'm hoping that you can talk a little bit about what about the book and what it
yes.
offers
Sure,
and
sure,
sort of
sure.
what led you to wanting to, put it out into the world in the first place.
Yes. Oh gosh, I was so nervous too when I first, got this thought. I woke up one morning and in those wee hours, when you're first just kind of getting up, these different random thoughts come to you. And the first thought that came to me, this was like 3 years ago, I woke up and I said, I think I need to write a book. And then I just kind of looked at myself in the mirror and I said, "Where did that come from?" Like
I love it.
who am I? Who am I that people don't want to um, listen to me or read my book and so forth? Because all my life, my friends have been like Abraham Maslow's books and Systemiology and Bronfman Brenner and Nussbaum. And so, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, read these wonderful, wonderful books. But then I felt like I just needed to empower and inspire people that may be like me,
Mhm.
and may be, hiding and not having the courage to kind of step out and maybe they're too conscious of their disability or their challenge. And so I just had to do it. I had to do it for them.
Mhm.
And so it's all started with this one title in my head, which was Activate Success. How do we activate success? And so there are three constructs in the book, and there's a workbook too that goes along with it. And I just hope that people pick up both of these things and use it for their clients and their students. So the three constructs, the three themes that run throughout these books are they are stated in three pillars. Pillar one is self-discovery. That's that self-awareness of who am I, where am I going, how do I get there, and how do I stay there? So
Mhm.
those are the four essential questions that I address through this first pillar. The second pillar is change readiness. You have to be ready before you point fingers. You have to be ready.
Yeah.
And I address the fact that everybody wants some sort of change,
Yeah.
but they don't want to change themselves. They want to change other people.
Or the
And
world, yeah, they around them.
yes,
Yeah.
and frankly, you cannot change others. You can only change yourself.
I know, as
So
much as we
that
might want
change,
to, right?
exactly. And so, and the third pillar, which again goes back to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, the third pillar is called sustainable impact because we really want to keep the things that are working.
Mhm.
We want to keep those things going. You don't want to reinvent the world. You want to seize those things that are working beautifully.
Mhm.
And so, one of the things that I address through this sustainable impact piece is the reflecting on pre-pandemic models that no longer function for post-pandemic. I mean, that pandemic was huge.
Mhm.
It was a marketable event in history. We cannot go back to how things were before the pandemic.
Mhm.
Values changed big time. People died.
Mhm.
The way that we view work changed, completely changed.
Hmm.
Pre-pandemic, nobody was thinking about virtual. Nobody was talking about hybrid workplaces. And so this pandemic has brought a new jargon. It's brought a new construct, a new language to the workplace. So in this book, I just know that it's going to help so many people. But where do you start with these pillars? And so I've given people 27 activators. If you don't know where to start with these activators.
Yeah.
There are chapters of different leadership styles that I go through. And my own study this year through the Leadership Academy, through NCDA, is also highlighted here in this book. I give a formula that has worked 100% for me. That formula for conflict resolution is in this book. It connects feelings, values with stressors.
Hmm.
I talk about the empathy ethic. See, compliance is the least that we can do in
Yeah.
this world.
Yeah. That's the bare
Compliance is the
minimum.
least.
Yeah. Bare
We,
minimum.
yeah, bare minimum, like you said. So we have to spend time in cultivating what I call an empathy ethic and make it a principle, an
Hmm.
empathy ethic. And also, I address the new normal concept. What is the new normal
Hmm.
concept or plural concepts? So, there are plenty of tools and tips and insights. And it's in the title, it says to be a leader in your niche, but it's not only for leaders, it's for everybody,
Yeah.
honestly. But it's just that I view everyone as being a leader
Yeah. Yeah.
because they are self-leading every single day.
Exactly. Yeah. Leadership isn't a title. Anybody can be a leader. It's just a matter of, well, people will trust you. And, even if you're just leading yourself through something, you have to trust yourself enough in order to make the change or to make that first step or whatever it might be. And I think too often people view leader that term as something that's like a title, and I don't perceive it as a title either. It's an attitude that and a level of trust that is either given to, it could be internal or it could be external.
Exactly, exactly. And people are blindly self-leading every
Mhm.
day.
Yeah.
So these chapters, this book really brings it together for every individual in how they are self-leading, and it points to different aspects of how you live your life that perhaps you may not have thought of.
Yeah, I think you're bringing attention to something that I think is really critical and giving people a pathway to, you know, initiate change, that are, because usually that's often the hardest spot for somebody is like, where do I start? Where do I begin? And so
That's
you're helping people to have that, which I think is amazing. Um,
thank you so much.
of
And
course.
and Ken, honestly, it's a whole different perspective because it's written by a female with a disability, and a foreign born counselor.
Yeah.
So it definitely has different perspectives in there, because to me, that's what diversity is. Diversity is not only the biology of you, but it's the psychology of you, the social of you, the culture of you, and the spiritual of you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Diversity it's all of us. It's not just all of the different parts that make us who we are and how they intersect. And then all of us are different. There's diversity is all of us, and I think that that's what the goal should be. It's been such a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much. How can people connect with you and the work you do if they want to learn a little bit more, or reach out, maybe get the book or whatever, which we'll also have a link to down in the show notes as well. But how can people, get in contact with you?
Thank you, Ken. So I am on a website, www.drsujataives.com. So they can email me through there. I'm also on LinkedIn. Now, I'm not on Facebook or Instagram because, like I mentioned before, I'm a military wife. And so I have a few constraints, and so I have to honor and respect my role in life that way. But absolutely, I love uh, LinkedIn. And of course, my website would be great. The books, both the book and the workbook and Kindle are available through Amazon and Ingram Spark.
Awesome, awesome, and yeah, and we'll link to them in the show notes as well. Thank you so much, Dr. Ives, for joining me and being a guest on this show. I adore you, the work you do, and I think you're just amazing. So thank you so much for coming on and joining me. This is
Likewise, Ken. Thank you so much. It's been so much fun, and I look forward to seeing you soon.
Yes, likewise, likewise.
Take care.
Thank you. This has been the Dissing My Ability podcast. I'm your host, Ken Meeker, and thank you for listening. And remember to be kind to yourself and to everyone else.